podcast.
Hey, Tiffany.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Me too.
I'm almost tempted to ask you how your week was, but we already decided we're not going to do that because we're just going to jump right into it today.
Yeah, it's going to be a shorter one today.
Yeah.
We realize that it's really hard to digest too much at once.
Yep.
Just recognizing what you're in. That's something we both went through.
Absolutely. Yep. We have a question too from one of our listeners this week. James out of Oregon was actually, wondering the follow up from our last episode. When we found out or accepted that we were being abused, like how did we deal with it?
Mhm.
And yeah, we want to talk a bit about that today because we had quite a bit of time to ponder on that question this week because it came in pretty early on, just on the same Sunday that we did the last recording. So we thought about this the entire week, and one of the things we recognized was the length of time it took for us to go through that process.
Yeah.
I can recall when it became a lot clearer to me that I was being abused. And I remember, watching or trying to watch YouTube videos and listening to podcasts on narcissism. And most of them were between 15 to 45 minutes long.
Mhm.
And I could hardly make it through the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It was so painful because the things they were saying, they sounded just like what I was experiencing.
Mhm.
And it was triggering all kind of emotional disturbances inside of me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I couldn't cope with it.
It takes time to go through that process or to even accept um, just a little bit
Yeah,
of the recognition. It's really, really difficult to hear it for the first time and start to think about it. And yeah,
but the funny thing is, like, I wasn't hearing it for the first time. It was just now registering for the
mhm,
first time.
yes,
I felt stupid. When I thought about it, I recognized that one, my abuser was telling me for years they were abusing me
yeah,
straight to my face. That's the first thing. My friends, well, my one friend who was testing my truth when I really think about it, was saying, "Hey, that sounds like abuse." And then when I started to listen to this stuff, um, it was basically saying, "Hey, here's what's happening to you,"
hmm
and I couldn't cope with it.
yeah,
I was drowning in this kind of self pity and denial.
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah. Do you remember my reaction the first time you told me? We would talk, just regular conversation, like say stuff about my home life, and when you first said to me, "Well, I don't like the way he treats you," that seems like abuse to me. What was my reaction? Do you remember that?
I do. The first time I got the courage to actually say it to you, um, yeah, your reaction was like this shock and disbelief. You
Mhm.
had this look of horror on your face. I thought I was losing you at that moment, to be honest with you. It was pretty tough to say to you. It took a while, and then I saw you shaking your head kind of weirdly, and you did that thing where you said, that was it. And that was the end of that conversation for the day. And then you changed it. You changed topic. You didn't want to talk about it.
hmm Yeah, so you said that when you got the courage to say something, I think that's a big aspect of this too. People can see it because they're on the outside, but they're scared to say something because they don't want to interfere or yeah, they don't want to seem like they're trying to influence you or change your mind about something.
yeah, relationships are difficult to deal with. So when you have a friend, because we're friends by then,
Mhm.
and they're living a particular lifestyle, or they have some sort of like whatever they've chosen for their relationship. They tell you about themselves, they tell you about the relationship sometimes, and you're thinking, I'm not sure if that person is really having as much fun as they seem to
Mhm.
try to represent. And that's what I saw with your situation.
Yeah.
You were telling me, oh yeah, this weekend was great. We did this, we did that. And I was thinking, man, that doesn't sound like you. That
Mhm.
sounds like someone different. And what really was like some key things that you would do that I thought were weird. Like I remember you would bring, your like people bring like food for lunch, to the office.
Yeah.
And I thought it strange that you would never eat the leftovers. You would always dump them. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, why'd you bring them? Oh, I just don't want to upset him. He cooked all this stuff. I tell him it's too much, and he still keeps doing it. So I just don't want him to be upset with me. And for me, that was like, well, that's weird. Like, why would somebody be so angry? But you're still representing that you have this really great relationship with them
It's like your words
and
and
your
your
actions.
energy
Yeah,
doesn't match.
yeah, and yeah, there's a whole like set of stuff that doesn't correspond.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just wondered about it all the time. And then you meet the person or whatever, and you try not to be biased, but this is
Mhm.
my friend and that's your partner, none of my business. That's how I felt at first.
Yep.
But at the same time, there was just something weird about it. And like I said, when I finally got the courage to say, well, I don't know, maybe you might want to rethink this.
Mhm.
This is not healthy, kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And I guess too, because I was experiencing my own thing,
Mhm.
and I felt like, you know, if I could get a do-over on my end,
Yeah.
there's some things that I wouldn't want someone else to, be doing like I did, like not wanting to say like honest things to the other person.
Mhm.
Because I kind of understood it, right? I couldn't say like those things to my person either.
Right.
But by then too, I was kind of working through my process, and I realized that if you can't tell your partner the truth
Mhm.
and telling them the truth about how you feel hurts them so much that you would rather keep that to yourself,
Yeah.
that's a pretty strong tell about your relationship
Yeah.
that you're having.
If you can't tell your partner that they're hurting you because you're afraid it's gonna hurt them.
Yes, that's a powerful way to say it. Yeah, you might want to check, what's going on with your relationship at that point.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I remember that you were in this state of denial. You
Mhm.
make excuses for them,
Yeah.
and I realized too that I was doing the same thing when I started to reflect back and I realized, you know, like watching you go through it, when I mentioned it to you, awakened something in me to realize I think I'm doing that thing too.
Yeah.
I'm lying to myself that this is like the best thing ever, or I'm ignoring the signals of the really awful things and replacing them with just the one or two little good things that does happen
Mhm.
and making it seem like if my entire life is just those one or two things. And the truth is, even those one or two good things, they're not real.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They're just cliche stuff. Oh, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, we went to this really nice restaurant. So everybody assumes by the way how you said it
Yeah.
that you had a good time.
Yeah. What I've realized is it's not the places you go that makes it a good time. It's who you're with.
Yeah, and then being with a genuine person who's a whole person who can share their life with you, and you
Mhm.
get to do the same thing. right? Whereas what was happening to me was, yeah, we went to a restaurant, it's true.
Mhm.
The dinner was fantastic, it was true.
Yeah.
But I didn't enjoy it because, as usual, the sequence of events was a couple quarrels before you left about
Mhm.
timing or getting ready or whatever. A bit of humiliation when you get there. Um, some snarky, insulting remark or whatever, followed
Mhm.
up by, a little bit of bad talking the waiter or the waitress, on their part.
Yeah.
Followed by, you feeling all miserable. And then when you get home, they claim they had a good time or they say something like really weird and they acted like if that thing never even happened.
Mhm.
Like all the things that you're saying when you get home is like, man, I was really concerned about this. And then they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, I was only joking.
Yeah.
You take it the wrong way. Why are you so sensitive? All right. So it's almost like that night never happened. You're just being gaslit
Yeah.
the rest of the time, right? So yeah, when I stopped lying to myself, it was easier to also see when someone else was also lying to themselves as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, I recognized then, I remember there was a podcast I'd listened to, and they had described the entire thing like mourning a death of a person. And for me, that was pretty morbid because I mean, who likes someone to die, right?
Mhm.
But they described it perfectly correct. What I realized was the person that I loved, the idea of the person that I loved really didn't
Mhm.
exist.
Yeah. So yeah, you do have to mourn it like a death. Like the idea of this person that you had never existed.
Yeah.
So there's like a grief aspect to it. You have to grieve for that relationship you thought you had.
And you don't realize that you're grieving either.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took me a long time to come to grips with the fact that I was actually in that whole process of grief.
Yeah. You don't really know what it is at the time. It really, really hurts. It sucks.
Yeah.
You can't like describe it, but it's so painful.
Yeah. And that's why it took me so long to, right? Because, like I mean, I know people or I've known people who have passed away and it didn't have, to me, that strong of an impact
Hmm.
on my life. You know what I'm saying? Like for example, my dad was a really great guy. I loved him a lot. And when he passed away, I was able to deal with it
Hmm.
without any sense of trauma or anything. The memories were great. He lived a full life,
Hmm.
Um, I was, there was this weird satisfaction, I guess, of knowing that he had done such a wonderful thing in the world and now he moved on. But when I realized that the person that I had spent 20 something years loving did not even exist.
Yeah. That's that's a
That
hard.
was rough. So that's what I'm saying. When I first started to listen to this type of podcast, where people are talking about their hurt and their pain, and they're telling you what a narcissist is and
Hmm.
all the things to watch out for. Like listening to that stuff and someone telling me this is what's happening to you. I couldn't get past 5 minutes of it.
Yeah.
Well, it took me about 3, 4 months to listen to a full episode of anything. It was that painful.
Yeah.
And I went through that with you, like talking to you as a friend. And the good thing about having a friend to talk to is that we were able to cycle in and out of it.
Mhm.
Because when I thought I had lost you by saying something like that and you changing the topic, you did come back like a day or two later
Mhm.
and you would ask the follow-up question.
Yeah. There's when you have time to process it. And
Mhm.
yeah, what went on in my head was when you first said the word abuse. That one hit really hard. And my first reaction in my head was denial. It's like, no, no, that's not happening. No, it's not abuse. I know abuse. I've been abused before. This isn't that because it was so similar, but yet so different than the first one. So yeah, denial was definitely my first reaction.
Yeah.
I couldn't accept that it was real.
And as I watch you go through it, and when I would go home on after the office, and I would be like, hmm, I pointed this out in her. I pointed out this thing that she told me. And then it's like, oh my goodness, like that's the same thing that's happening to me. Like, no way. I was in denial too. It was really funny. And I remember I remember the day that we decided to have like a deeper conversation about it. It's one of those times when you ask me a question, it's like, so do you experience this thing in your relationship? I can't remember what specific it was on that day, but I think that was like, oh, like that was the time when you were asking me about, that guy who had sent you this really awful set of suggested messages, and your partner was like, oh, he's just joking,
Mm-hmm.
but it was very clear that he was literally being, I guess, chauvinistic and abusive because he wanted you to tell him about what you're wearing. To me, that's creepy as hell,
Mm-hmm.
especially
It
since
was,
he knows who your partner is, right?
yeah.
And yeah, I remember like as we started to dive deeper into these exchanges, you would say things to me like, I don't know, she sounds pretty much like my partner.
Mm. Well, I remember pointing out the similarities between the two. I'm like, do they know each other?
Yes.
So similar. How do they not know each other? Are they having meetings that we don't know about?
I remember it was so funny, and we would say these things kind of light and joking,
Mhm.
but then when you go back and you experience it,
Yeah,
it became a lot clearer that I wasn't going crazy after all, and I was really experiencing abuse myself, and I too was in denial.
yeah. And I think something that helped so much is the humor. Like
Yes,
we could laugh and have fun with it. Like, it's not a fun thing to go through, but you can make light of it. You can create humor out of it, and that was very powerful for I think both of us
yeah,
in
because
the healing process.
then there was this guy that we would watch occasionally on TikTok. I think I remember.
Oh yes,
The
I
guy that would
forget
put
his
the
name.
wigs on and like that's really skillful
Yeah,
actually.
he was funny.
Yeah, and one of the crazy videos where he'd be talking to himself,
Yeah,
they go in one scene and
yeah. The first date
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
That one was awesome.
Yeah, and basically this guy kind of was representing the dialogue between a narcissist and a codependent person. And it was like, whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was
We
really
also
good.
find, as one of the videos that,
Yeah, I'll find
highlighting,
the first date one. That
yeah,
one was the first one that we watched.
yes, and that helped a lot because he was so funny
Mhm.
and it was so therapeutic when I was able to laugh about it while still at the same time recognizing you're definitely in a state of denial, Tyrone, and this is what's happening to you, and you need to embrace the fact that you're having a challenge.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was my first time really looking at it because we were having that dialogue.
Mhm.
We were able to test our truth with each other, and the gaslighting now was no longer having the same effect of making us feel like our reality was not real.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Let's see what other stages.
But that's the thing.
There's no like you can't do it in order because there's no order to this.
Well, okay. So the psychologists they say that you go through denial, um, you go through anger, then you do this bargaining process, then you get this depression, and then you get acceptance.
Mhm.
And I think the way unfortunately it comes over is like if there's this sequence of events.
Mhm.
Like one begins at a point, then it
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah.
Then you
That's
start the next
yeah,
one,
that's not
then it ends. But I can say for sure that's not what really happens.
no. You like weave in between them all. Like
Yes.
there's no in your mind.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because like you would get to a place where you would accept like one or two bits of the abuse and you'd be like, okay, yeah, this is definitely abuse. This is
Yeah.
not good.
And then you'd ignore all the little
All
things
the
that
other
add
ones.
up.
Yes. And then you're like, okay, but they're not a complete narcissist.
Exactly. That's exactly what yeah. I'm like, okay, well, he has tendencies, but yeah, he's definitely not a full narcissist.
Yeah, so that's the whole thing, right? Like when you're experiencing it, and then when you're listening to these podcasts and stuff, you begin to think, well, which stage am I at?
Mhm.
You're at all of them.
Yeah.
You're cycling through that process over and over again.
Yeah.
So like my first denial was about the whole gaslighting thing. That was my first denial. And it was like, well, no, maybe I did forget. No, well, maybe I did overreact. Maybe I was too angry. Maybe. And I kept making up all these maybes and I was in denial.
Mhm.
And then it was like, no, everything tells me about this gaslighting that I've watched or listened to. And then I started buying books on it and I started diving deeper into it. And it's like, I'm being gaslit constantly.
The phrases they use. Wait a minute,
Predictable
that
phrases.
sounds so familiar.
Yes.
Like, you're taking it the wrong way. I was just joking.
Look at what you made me do.
You made me angry. Um,
You're crazy.
you're, you're too emotional. You're too sensitive.
Yeah, you have to be a special kind of crazy to think that I would do that. It is you, not me. I would never say that. If
Mm-hmm.
I never said that.
Yeah,
Like
that's another big one.
they keep playing over in my mind because they're so real and they were happening so often, and I didn't want to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
See, time is the biggest factor in this. This thing happens over time, and you go through all these processes over and over for long periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
It took you 3 years
Yeah.
before you finally were able to get up.
Yeah, it's definitely not a fast, easy
No,
process.
because you keep cycling in and out of it
Mm-hmm.
until you finally make that cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, final decision. But like, so you start with your denial, then it makes you really angry. I mean, the the sequencing is kind of correct, but
Mm-hmm.
like I said, we kind of go back and forth on it, and it takes time. Nobody's just like, well, I did the first four parts, and now I'm at acceptance, and now I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
No, you start with denial, then you get really angry because, and I remember when I got angry, oh, I was pissed
Mm-hmm.
because
So were you angry at yourself or her or
both. Um, see, I was hurt because I really loved her,
Mhm.
so I became angry at her first because why would you do that to me? And
Yeah.
then when I realized that this person doesn't exist, then I became angry with myself.
Yeah, blaming yourself.
It's like, how could you not see this?
Yeah. Yeah, and for me too, it was especially difficult because I had been through an abusive, narcissistic relationship before. So I beat myself up even more because like, I should have learned my lesson. Why, how did I wind back up? Didn't I learn enough from the first one? So I was like,
Yeah.
I had a really hard time with like, beating myself up over it because I just repeated the same thing, same cycle that I just escaped from.
And then you start that bargaining process. What's that look like? Let's go to counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Let's work this out.
Oh, maybe it'll get better.
Oh man.
He's just having a rough time.
And you try to explain it to them and they get angry with you for even thinking it.
Yep.
And then if you stick to your guns, then bring out the crocodile tears and they start crying and they promise to change.
Mhm.
And then you think that you've made a good bargain
Yeah, we've gotten through to them.
and you've gotten through, and then 2 weeks later they're back to doing the exact same thing. In fact, my situation was we would literally finally get to the stage where she would give in and say, I'm sorry. I recognize what I did to you was hurtful.
Mhm.
And then in the same night, less than an hour later, she would do something equally hurtful about the same thing I just complained about. And I was like, I thought we just spoke about this.
That's how
You're
you
doing
know.
this again.
That's how you know they know what they're doing.
Yes. And it's a pattern that they have developed with their disorder, where they're only accustomed to manipulating you.
Mhm.
And they can't get their supply anymore. So, because now when you've talked about it, the expectation is they're going to be a whole person. They're going to start taking care of themselves. They're going
Mhm.
to stop dumping the responsibility on you to make them feel good. And then before you know it, no, it's your responsibility again. And
Right back where you started.
yeah, so the bargaining that you're going to try, that's just a reality of the grieving process. You're going to try to bring that person back.
Mhm.
You're going to try to save the person that you thought you are in love with, that you're loving. That person doesn't exist.
Mhm.
They're dead. They're not real. They never were. You fell in love with a fake person.
I remember when I remember when that hit me. Like it hit me really, really hard. Just driving um just on a road trip,
Yeah.
and I just something triggered in my mind, and I just started bawling my eyes out. I could not stop bawling. I tried so hard to hold it in, but it wasn't happening. I was like ugly crying.
Sorry.
This was like, yeah, accepting that this person never existed, and then you've loved a phantom for however long you have, and you thought they were loving you back when you realized they never were not capable of that. That is like that's the closest thing to actual grief
Yeah,
that I've
that's the
experienced.
depression. That's the depression state that they're talking about. Yeah, so denial, anger, bargaining, depression.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the depression you're feeling. That's that really low,
Yeah,
low.
that was heavy.
Yeah.
And this one particular song came on the radio. Oh my, that that I don't even the words of the song I didn't even know. It was just something about the music
Frequency of the music.
that that triggered something. That's what kicked it off, and I just like for hour and a half straight, I was just bawling my eyes out. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, I can remember my most major depression state. It happened, we'd had an argument and we had determined that I would get an answer about a change that needed to be made as far as I was concerned. I was in that bargaining stage.
Hmm.
And I said, hey, end of the year is coming. I don't want to start the next year like this. I need an answer by midnight
Hmm.
because I'm not starting the next year like this. We're not going to be arguing anymore. I'm tired. And she said, sure, no worries. I'll get back to you.
Hmm.
I didn't sleep that night. I waited. I waited the entire night. And she slept like if nothing happened. She never got back to me. Next morning, it was just like regular conversation.
Yeah, nothing ever happened.
Yeah. And I broke. I was like, hey man, like we had a conversation, we had an argument, we made an agreement, you're gonna let me know what's gonna go on.
Hmm.
And she looked at me like, yeah, oh, I can't believe, like, you sure? And it was like, what? This was just yesterday.
Hmm.
It's not like last year was like a year ago. It was literally yesterday. This is the 1st of January of that year now. And it's like, it never happened. And then she did the flip the switch thing. Okay, okay. I promised I'm going to do this. And I knew. I
Hmm.
knew in that moment for sure then at that point. I'd seen enough of the same pattern over and
Hmm.
over again.
Yeah, just
And I was
stringing you
no
along.
longer going back to denial.
Hmm.
I was stuck in depression for a long time. It really affected me.
Hmm.
It affected my health. Um, I would binge eat a lot. I did all kind of stuff to myself. Financially, I started to do crazy things. Like everything just started to fall apart for me for a while before I finally like came out of the depression. Like I knew for sure that I was done.
Hmm.
There was no more denying anymore. I wasn't going back to the top of that cycle again to
Right.
deny and be angry. I was just stuck in this depression for months, maybe 2 to 3 months. Like
Mm.
it would come in waves as well. So it would
Yeah.
be like deep, deep, deep depression, and then you start to feel a little better because you talk to your friend, and you tell
Hmm.
them how you feel, but then when you go back to the environment, another
Hmm.
deep, dark depression again. And yeah, so I finally was able to speak my truth to that person and say, I'm done.
Yeah.
This is how it's going to be going forward.
Yeah. It's the acceptance,
Yes. And then once that acceptance was in place,
and it's just finding a way out.
that was it.
It's the
Yeah, but
hardest.
it started with my made up mind.
Mhm.
Once I had settled in my mind,
Yeah.
this is real.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. This is the what.
Mhm.
Now comes the how.
Yes.
How do you get out?
And that's where you get to. But
Hmm.
yeah, you do go through those cycles. It does take a bit of time.
Right.
Years, months, weeks. It's not a 1 day thing.
No.
It's not a clean process.
No. Yeah, it's something you definitely have to, as much as it sucks, take your time.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody's not ready to come out at the same time. I
Mhm.
wasn't ready. When you started to point out to me the similarities, I wasn't
Mhm.
ready.
Coming out kind of sounds like something else.
Well, that's okay. You can do that too. They go through it.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't come out of the darkness or
precisely.
the
Well, I mean, I can only imagine. I don't know, but and I don't ever want to pretend that I know. But what I can say is that like grieving these different deaths that you go through in a relationship, right? Because that's what it really is. Because then the next one that you go through after you finally decided that this is it
hmm.
is the death of the relationship that the public knows.
Right.
You see what I'm saying, right? So, and then you go through that whole cycle again because now you find yourself having to, explain to people
Yeah.
why you're no longer there, right? And then you kind of
And
it
then
gets triggered all over
you
again.
get the
So
stupid comments from these people because they were on the outside and they had no clue what was going on.
precisely.
They have to deal with all these people and their stupid comments and
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's like when a relative dies,
Hmm.
especially like if it's somebody you were close to, and maybe you just talk to them on the phone, and then somebody calls you and says, "Hey, this is what just happened." You'd be like, "No, no, no, I just talked to them. I just talked to them. It's not true." That's your denial.
Hmm.
That's your shock and disbelief moment. And then you feel like maybe you're angry because, oh, I should have done this or I should have done that, and
Hmm.
then you say, oh, well, maybe if I can get there fast enough, I can change it, or no, they're already gone. You drop everything and you try to get there because you think that you could change something to bring them back. You can't.
Hmm.
And then you go through that depression. And that's just like what's like. It's just grief.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
yeah, it
and
takes time.
in this case, like you can't, like there's no bringing them back because they never existed in the first place.
Yes, and that's hard. It's really hard when you've spent a long time loving an imaginary person.
Hmm.
And
the idea of the person
yeah,
and just ignoring who they've been telling you they are the whole time.
yeah, because they pretended to be that person for a little while too.
Absolutely, especially in the beginning.
Yeah,
They pretend to be the like you're everything you would ever want. That's what they are.
yep,
But that quickly fades after they know they've got you.
yes.
And then the mask starts to slip. Yep.
Yeah. So we want to encourage you to live in your reality. Find a functional friend, counselor, coach
Yep.
to test your truth with, and yeah, be whole. It's really important that we find that true reality that we're living in, so you can be your authentic and genuine self every single day of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you start doing that, it's amazing how things just change.
When you let go of your pain, and you start living your happiness.
You make your decision and you let go of the past.
Yeah, you wish them well as you
Yeah.
do wish them well because that person has a disorder.
Yep. They're extremely traumatized people. That's how it comes out in them.
So
It's,
don't hit them. Just understand, hey, this is what they do and they need help. And it's best for you to say to that person, I wish you well and I hope you do get help. I have loved you as best I can. And it just hurts me too much to keep doing this to myself.
Mhm.
And by you doing that, it kind of prompts them to do something if they want to, if they choose to.
Mhm.
But it's not your responsibility to hurt yourself so that someone else can be happy.
Wow.
So this is tough listening to because, like I said, we struggled. So if you've made it this far in the podcast, it means that
Congratulations.
you're a little bit closer to that point of acceptance.
Yeah.
If you don't hear this, then you probably stopped after the first 5 minutes because a lot of the stuff we said earlier was a little tough.
Mhm.
But
No,
you hang in there.
it's all tough, but yeah, you
You
can
hang
get
in
through
there.
this. We got through it. We're living examples.
Absolutely.
Anyone can do it.
So have a great night, a great weekend, a great day, whatever time you're listening to this podcast. And James, thanks for your question. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Until next week.